Hi makers, this is part 3 of how to make an electric bike. Click the card in the upper right corner to watch the first part. In this third and hopefully final part, we will finish the front lights, go through the electrical systems, the controllers, and come up with a solution for the motor gears. Let's get started. I will start off this video by marking, cutting and gluing in place the last side covers for the front lights. Now we can move on to the electronics. Take an Arduino Mega 2560 and push pins into the headers, placing pieces of circuit boards on top. I then soldered the pins in place. Next, I soldered the two cathodes to one wire from the last week's remaining cable and connected the two anodes to a wire each. I used heatshrink tubing as isolation. I connected the other ends to digital 33 and 34 and to ground on the breakout board. I then prepared pieces of twisted wire, some heatshrink tube, two push buttons and two 10 kilo-ohm resistors. Then solder a wire to one of the leads of the button. Solder a resistor to the lead next to it. I actually did it wrong in the video, don't make the same mistake. To the resistor's other lead, solder a wire as well as one to that lead directly. Again, I isolated using the wider shrink tubing. I repeated this once more and secured them in place next to the grips with silicone, holding both in place with masking tape while curing. I soldered two wires to D35 and D36 and a third to a 5V terminal. I connected the two ground wires of the buttons to the wire connected to the ground of the Arduino. I connected the right button signal wire to the wire connected to D36 and the left button's wire to that which is connected to D35. I lastly connected the button's 5V wires to the wire from the Arduino's 5V header. Next, I used the machine screw and the die stock to pull the right panel inwards and sealed up the inside with silicone. I soldered two temporary cables to each battery terminal. Then I connected two wires to a USB voltage regulator's output terminals and placed it above the Arduino. I connected the two wires to 5V and ground and used masking tape to temporarily secure the boards. I then connected the cables from the battery to the regulator's screw terminals. And it seemed to work. Next, I disconnected the speed controller's wires and secured it to the inside of the front lights. I then cut the old wires to the controller. Ouch! After a decision, I cut the wires between the Arduino and regulator and reconnected those wires after adding a second Ethernet cable in between, securing the regulator to the front lights. I took a switch and connected a power cable from the battery to one terminal and soldered the speed controller's positive and the signal and power wires of a voltage meter to the other. I soldered the voltmeter's ground to the ground of the battery. I also connected a cable from the switch and from the battery ground to the regulator. This step isn't necessary, but for future upgrade's sake, I cut the throttle signal wire in half and connected a relay in between through the common and normally closed terminals. To its first control terminal, I soldered a new Ethernet wire and connected a piece of wire to the other, connecting that to USB ground, securing the relay in place. Next, I secured the dash with hot glue, transferred the carbon fiber vinyl film and trimmed it. I cut out the excess where the switches and display will be. After desoldering the wires and pushing them through the center hole, I reconnected the wires to the switch. I wrapped the terminals in electrical tape and pressed down on the switch. I used hot glue to secure the voltage meter display and smeared some silicone on top, making it more water resistant. Next, I cut the motor connectors off and soldered the extension cables to the wires and resoldered the connectors, plugging them into the controller. I cut off the connector and connected the lock wires to the speed controller and plugged in the throttle wires. I soldered wires to the positive and negative battery terminals, connected the positive to a second switch, soldering a second wire to the other side. I isolated the exposed areas and connected the negative and one wire from the switch to a voltage regulator and set the voltage to 12 volts. I connected the front and rear light wires to the two output terminals. For later upgrades, I mounted the pedal assist sensor, but in an unconventional way due to that the cranks were stuck because of rust. Next, I took a 1W LED and secured a tiny heatsink to it. I soldered a pair of wires to its terminals and secured it to a 3D printed part. I repeated this once more. I stuck them in place with silicone and hot glue, connected their wires and the logos light in parallel and connected a resistor and to it an all USB cable. I later plugged the USB into the step-down module. After that, I took a thick cardboard and cut out the back cover of the front housing. The cardboard wasn't the best option, aluminum would have been better, but I didn't have anything else on hand at the time, so it worked okay thanks to the carbon fiber film that I later applied. I inserted a for now useless switch, but I will use it for functions of the future upgrades. I somewhat isolated the area around the switches with silicone. I then sprayed the bike's name onto the frame, but found a problem with the front lights. Let me in the past explain it for you. So, I have a bit of a problem here. So when you turn on the main system, as you would expect, the LEDs on the sides and the logo lights up, but here 3 LEDs aren't working. And I've opened up the silicone. I tried to fix it, but it didn't work. And I have some other white LEDs, but these are other kinds, and it's a bit of a problem that these aren't as flexible. And it has 15 LEDs instead of 12. So while I'm waiting for the new LED strips to arrive, I will try to cover up the 3 diodes on the other side to make it aesthetically more pleasing. So let's do that now. I ended up sticking pieces of vinyl onto those LEDs. After that, there were only some few accessories and details left. I painted the key tag black and replaced the hand grip branding with the build version. I also wrapped the charger power supply in carbon fiber vinyl. I electrically isolated the insides of the steel plates with vinyl. But one last thing remained that hasn't been solved yet: the chain issues. So I ordered a $35 chain tensioner. So right now I'm going to go get the tightener for the chain. Let's see how that goes, and I don't know, maybe it will solve all the problems with the chain loosening up, so yeah, let's see. So I secured it with the provided screw and nut. In the end, it did help a lot. The chain rarely jumps off nowadays. After the motor nut disappeared, he came up with another mounting way. I drilled right through the motor axis and drove in an M3 screw with its head cut off and a slit made. This has also resulted in that the gear never jumps off, though it still wobbles a bit. But today I applied a metal paste and I hope it won't wobble as much anymore. And I have also built a cover for the motor gear and chain. In the future I might make an update video if requested of these problems and solutions and other upgrades. In case I won't, be sure to follow me on Instagram. So that's it. It took me 3 months, $500 and a heck of an amount of patience and persistence, but it was worth it. It is really fun to ride and quite cheap too, less than $1 a week, riding every day. And that is how you turn a bike into an e-bike. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more cool projects like this, and I will see you makers next weekend. I wrecked it Yeah. So what? I think I will order a 250 watt hub motor. Gearless, I think, because I'm really tired of the sound. You see, the nuts are falling out.